My brother framed me for hacking our school's network, and I got expelled. Years later, I found his confession hidden on a flash drive. I don't remember the exact moment I realized I was living in Nick's shadow. Maybe it was the night he got his acceptance letter and Mom opened a bottle of wine like it was New Year's Eve. Maybe it was when the school principal shook his hand at graduation and said, "You've made this school proud, young man," while I stood a few feet away holding a borrowed laptop with a cracked hinge, waiting to fix the auditorium's projector. Or maybe it was earlier. Maybe I always knew. Maybe it was just built into the fabric of who we were. Nick, the front-facing, camera-ready, golden boy with the resume that could land a job in any boardroom. And me, Alex, the kid who memorized C++ before I could drive and spent weekends bypassing firewalls for sport. Nick is only 2 years older than me, but sometimes it feels like he was born in another dimension. He's 6'1" with a symmetrical face and a handshake that makes adults nod approvingly. His voice carries. Mine vanishes. When we're in the same room, he fills it, effortlessly, with stories about professors and college roommates and internships and soccer leagues. He asks me questions about what I'm working on, but it's the kind of interest that lasts 5 seconds, like a favor. I don't blame him. I know I talk too fast when I'm nervous, and I get nervous when people ask about my work because there's no way to explain how it feels to stare into lines of code and actually see them breathe. I don't hate Nick. That would be easy. But I do hate how I become invisible next to him. When I was 10, I built a basic app that calculated GPA projections. My teacher said it was impressive, like I had done a card trick. When Nick won the science fair the same year for presenting a model of tectonic plates that our dad helped him build, the local paper wrote a full-page article with a photo. Our mom laminated it and taped it to the refrigerator. It stayed there for 2 years. At 17, I know who I am. I know I'm the kid teachers trust with their passwords and ask to fix the printers even though it's not in my job description. I know that in every group project, I'm the one who does the back-end work while someone else presents and takes credit. I win scholarships, not because I write inspiring essays about my journey, but because I can crack through a data structure like it's a puzzle made for me, and I always solve puzzles. I'm the one who keeps the school's website secure and helps update their systems because they don't have enough funding to hire a real technician. They don't pay me. I don't ask them to. I just like it when things work, and I'm the reason they do. Nick's room is still set up like he never left. Posters aligned, bed made military tight, his high school trophies perfectly arranged. Mine's cluttered with monitors, cables, Raspberry Pis, energy drink cans, and stacks of notebooks filled with scribbled commands and back-end designs. My chair creaks. My keyboard is missing the N key. Sometimes, late at night, I pull up our school's internal network just to test if I could break it. I never do. That's not who I am. But knowing I could, that's something. That's mine. Nick doesn't know what it feels like to code for 12 hours straight with no music, just the sound of fans spinning and the occasional mechanical clack of the keys. He doesn't know the thrill of watching a line of logic execute perfectly after 4 hours of debugging. He doesn't know what it means to disappear into a problem so deeply that when you come out the other side, it's like surfacing from another reality. He doesn't know what it's like to be good at something no one really sees. When he came home for winter break, he brought a girl with him. She looked at me like I was the little brother, cute, quiet, weird. We shook hands. My palms were still dry with solder from fixing the front office's dead projector 10 minutes before. She asked me if I was thinking of applying to the same college. I told her no. I didn't explain that I had already been offered early admission to a tech institute halfway across the country. Didn't tell her I had interview requests from 3 cybersecurity startups and a standing offer to join a digital forensics team part-time. Didn't say a word. Just smiled. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in the dark, lit by the glow of 3 monitors, staring at a simulation I'd written to model real-time packet behavior in a compromised system. It was beautiful in the way only I understood. Elegant. Efficient. Mine. No spotlight. No applause. Just a terminal window, pulsing steady in the dark. It started like any normal Wednesday. I had just gotten out of AP Comp Sci, where we were running simulations on attack vectors and dummy environments. The teacher let me stay after class to help clean up a script that had crashed half the machines during testing. I didn't mind. That kind of thing was relaxing to me. 10 lines of malformed code, 10 minutes of quiet focus, and suddenly everything's back online like nothing ever happened. I walked to lunch late, past a group of kids whispering near the trophy case. Someone looked right at me, said nothing, but didn't look away either. I should have known something was off right then. I didn't hear about the breach until the next period, when I logged into the admin portal to check a ticket the librarian had opened about password resets. The system was running sluggish, unusually slow, and when I refreshed, a red banner popped across the top of the screen. Administrative access currently restricted. Please contact the system administrator. I didn't have to guess what that meant. Something big had gone down. By the time the announcement came over the intercom, my stomach had already dropped. Alex Donovan, please report to the principal's office immediately. The voice was flat. No panic. Just the kind of cold formality that means something's broken and someone's about to get blamed. I walked into the front office and the secretary wouldn't meet my eyes. That was new. Usually she smiled at me, asked if I could help fix the fax machine again. Today she just pointed to the principal's door and looked away. The moment I stepped inside, I knew. Mr. Holbrook sat behind his desk like a man who had already made up his mind. Next to him, the vice principal, and someone I didn't recognize. A man in a gray blazer with a badge clipped to his belt and a folder already open in front of him. They didn't offer me a seat. Alex, Holbrook began, and I could already hear the rehearsed disappointment in his voice. There's been a serious breach of our academic systems. Several student records were altered. Grades were changed. SAT scores were deleted entirely. This is a criminal offense. I stood there, frozen. We traced the IP activity, he continued. All login credentials point back to your student account. The timestamps match periods when you were in the building. Your account accessed the systems during restricted hours. Multiple times. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't even form a sentence in my head that made sense. My account. My credentials? I hadn't touched that part of the system in weeks. It was locked behind a separate firewall. I didn't have privileges to even view grade data, let alone alter it. But how do you explain that to a man who's already convinced you're guilty? I didn't do this. I finally managed. It sounded weak, pathetic, like a line a bad actor would deliver in a courtroom drama. Holbrook didn't flinch. The logs say otherwise. Until we complete a full review, your access is suspended. Your parents have been called. I've recommended expulsion. That word hit harder than the rest. Expulsion. Just like that. 17 years old, 0 warnings, 0 proof, and my entire future ripped out from under me in less than a 5-minute conversation. No chance to explain. No technical debrief. No audit. Just the logs say so. They didn't arrest me. Not yet. Just sent me home with a slip in my backpack and a look of disappointment burning into the back of my skull from every staff member I passed on the way out. The ride home was silent. My mom was crying before I even got in the car. My dad didn't speak, didn't even look at me, hands locked on the wheel like he was afraid he'd lose control if he let go. Nick wasn't home. I was glad. I couldn't take his version of disappointment too. The worst part wasn't the accusation. It was knowing exactly how someone could have done it. Exactly how my credentials could have been spoofed. How easy it would have been to mask access through cache sessions and rerouted proxies tied to my ID. How if I were the one investigating, I could have proved that in under an hour. But they didn't ask me to investigate. They asked me to confess. And when I didn't, they treated my silence like guilt. I lay awake that night staring at my ceiling, my laptop powered off beside me for the first time in years. Every thought in my head was noise. Flashes of server logs and access timestamps and lines of code that could have saved me if anyone had cared enough to let me speak. I didn't cry. I just stopped blinking until my eyes burned and the ceiling stopped looking like a ceiling. All I could think about was how fast it all fell apart. How easy it is to build something for years, piece by piece, then watch it crumble because someone wanted to point a finger and be done with it. I wasn't just being punished for something I didn't do. I was being erased. And the worst part was knowing that maybe no one would come looking for the truth. Because they'd already decided they found it. The first night home after the meeting with Holbrook felt like I'd been dropped into someone else's life. The silence at the dinner table wasn't angry or cold. It was worse, fragile, like everyone was holding their breath and hoping this was a bad dream we'd all wake up from. My mother hadn't stopped crying since the drive back. Every few minutes, she'd open her mouth like she was about to say something, then just press her lips shut and look away. My father sat across from me with his arms folded, eyes fixed on the wall behind my head. Not eating, not moving, just waiting for me to confess. I kept saying I didn't do it, that there had to be a mistake, but the words started sounding hollow even to me. The technical evidence was airtight. My login credentials, my IP, my access timestamps. Everything pointed back to me, and I knew exactly how it could have been faked, but knowing didn't matter when no one in the room understood what spoofing or packet injection even meant. They just heard, your son hacked the school, and decided it had to be true. Nick came home late that night. I heard the front door click quietly, like he didn't want to wake anyone, but I was still awake, sitting on the floor of my room surrounded by half-packed boxes and unopened mail from scholarship programs I probably wouldn't need anymore. He knocked softly once, then let himself in without waiting for an answer. He didn't sit, just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, the kind of posture people use when they're bracing for something ugly. I didn't look up. I was too busy rereading the same 4 lines of code on my tablet, over and over, hoping they'd somehow give me an answer that didn't exist. "I heard," he said after a long pause. I didn't reply. There was nothing to say that I hadn't already screamed into a pillow 3 hours ago. He sighed and walked in, slow and careful like he was trying not to spook me, and crouched in front of me like I was some wounded animal. "Look, I know this sucks," he said, his voice soft and maddeningly calm. "But you need to be smart about this. They've got logs, credentials. You know how this looks. If you fight it, it's just going to get worse." I finally looked at him then, and all I saw was pity. Not anger, not doubt, just that calm, practiced sympathy he used when talking to kids at campus events or freshmen who cried during finals week. It made my skin crawl. "You think I did it," I said quietly. Not a question, just a fact hanging in the air between us. He didn't deny it, didn't confirm it either, just tilted his head like a therapist and said, "I think it doesn't matter what I think, or even what happened. What matters is what they can prove. And right now, it looks bad. The school's panicking. The district's getting involved. Mom and Dad are falling apart. Just don't make it worse." "You want me to lie?" I said, the words catching in my throat. He didn't flinch. "I want you to survive this," he replied. "Tell them what they need to hear. Apologize. Say it was a mistake. Say you were messing around and it got out of hand. They'll expel you. Maybe, but the police won't get involved. You'll avoid a record. That's better than trying to play hero and ending up with charges." I stared at him, this perfect brother of mine who always had the answers, and realized he didn't see me as innocent. He saw me as expendable, as someone who could take the fall quietly to keep the family name intact. I didn't say another word, just stood up, walked to the door, and waited for him to get out of my room. The next day, they pulled my scholarship. Every single one. The emails came in one after another like falling bricks. Due to recent allegations, pending the outcome of disciplinary action. In light of current academic integrity concerns, no hearings. No interviews. Just polite, professional abandonment from every institution I'd spent the last 4 years chasing. My inbox turned into a graveyard of futures I wouldn't have. My friends stopped texting. Group chats went silent. One of them posted a joke meme about grade hackers on Instagram the same day, and even though he didn't tag me, I knew exactly who it was for. I didn't even bother to comment. By Friday, the decision had been made. I was being transferred to another district. I wasn't allowed to return to the school, not even to clean out my locker. My parents didn't fight it. They just sat me down that morning and told me I'd be living with Uncle Matt for the foreseeable future, said he had space, and it was a good environment to reset. Like I was some corrupted file they needed to reinstall in a different folder. My mother hugged me like she was saying goodbye to someone already gone. My dad didn't speak. Nick didn't come downstairs. That afternoon, I packed up my desktop, my books, the soldering iron I bought with my first freelance payment, and climbed into the back seat without saying a word. The engine started. The driveway disappeared behind us. My life, the version of it where I mattered, was already gone. Wisconsin wasn't the plan. It wasn't even on the map until everything else got torched, and I needed somewhere cold and forgettable to start over. Uncle Matt's garage had no insulation, and the first winter almost broke me. I spent nights wrapped in 2 layers of flannel and an old army blanket, huddled next to the space heater he loaned me after I froze my keyboard by accident. I was 17, technically still a minor, but no one cared. The district was glad to be rid of me. The school system washed their hands, and my parents disappeared so quickly it was like I'd never existed. Not a call, not a letter, not a single moment of doubt from the people who once called me brilliant. I got into a local technical college using a basic community grant. No essays, no interviews. Just paperwork and an exhausted admissions officer who didn't ask about the expulsion line on my record. I didn't tell them the whole story, just said I was rebuilding. They didn't ask for more. I worked in the IT lab to pay for books, fixed vending machines for a maintenance guy who paid in cash, and spent every break buried in cybersecurity journals and white papers from conferences I couldn't afford to attend. I stopped sleeping more than 4 hours at a time. My wrist developed a permanent ache from too much typing. My skin broke out from stress and cheap dorm food. But I didn't stop. By the second year, I had rebuilt a semblance of identity. I was the quiet kid who always stayed late in the labs, the one professors trusted with the expensive gear. I got a part-time job doing penetration testing for a mid-sized firm downtown. Nothing glamorous. Just scan and report stuff, basic red team exercises for lazy clients who didn't want to patch their systems. But I learned. I kept my head down. Didn't speak unless spoken to. Didn't correct people when they got things wrong. Just nodded and moved on. The third year, I landed a junior security analyst position at a financial security company with a gray office and a plastic ficus in the lobby. It paid just enough to rent a one-bedroom apartment with working heat and a lock I installed myself. I had a desk with 2 monitors, a keycard, and a list of rotating credentials I had to audit weekly. I spent my days tracing email spoofing campaigns and logging firewall traffic patterns. No one asked where I came from. No one cared about Wisconsin public records. I was just Alex from compliance, the guy who brought his own thermos and skipped office parties. I never heard from my parents. Not once. No birthdays. No holidays. Not even a single accidental email. My name must have been scrubbed from the family group chat years ago. Sometimes I search for them online, just out of habit. My mother's Facebook hadn't updated in forever. My dad's LinkedIn said he retired early. Nick showed up in a news article once, something about a fellowship in national cybersecurity policy, shaking hands with a congressman outside a marble building. His smile looked the same. Confident, composed, untouched. I didn't react. Just closed the tab and went back to my intrusion report. My apartment was clean. No decorations. No photos. Just black cables, Mac keyboards, and a microwave that sounded like it might explode. I didn't need much. I had internet. I had work. I had silence. That was enough. Enough to keep moving. Enough to forget. Enough to feel real again, even if no one else remembered I ever existed. The house smelled exactly the same. Old fabric softener and dust, like time had been paused instead of passed. I hadn't been back in nearly 4 years, not since the expulsion, not since the night I shoved my life into 3 boxes and left without saying goodbye. My parents barely looked at me when I walked through the front door for the funeral. They nodded like I was a neighbor they hadn't seen in years, polite but distant, as if the boundary they built between us still stood tall and uncracked. Nick wasn't there. Work, someone said, like that was an acceptable reason to miss the funeral of the woman who used to knit him scarves every winter. The service was quiet, small. A handful of relatives I didn't recognize, some neighbors who probably came more out of habit than grief. Grandma had been sick for a while, I heard, though no one had bothered to update me. The casket was closed. The flowers were artificial. After the burial, people trickled out without much ceremony. My mother gave me a brittle hug, then disappeared upstairs. My father didn't even stay for the coffee. On the last afternoon, with my duffel already packed and the train back to Madison leaving in 2 hours, I went down to the basement. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe nothing. Maybe just one last glance at the ghost of the person I used to be. The light still flickered when you flipped the switch, same buzzing hum from the old fluorescent tubes that used to flicker over my workbench. Half the shelves were untouched. My old monitor was still there, dusty but upright, tangled in a knot of USB cables and Ethernet cords. I started poking through the boxes stacked on the floor, labeled in fading Sharpie. Alex, tech stuff. Alex, MISC, projects. The third box was heavier than I remembered. Mostly old boards, frayed adapters, a busted Raspberry Pi from the year I tried building my own network sniffer. At the bottom, buried under a roll of electrical tape and a broken laptop fan, was a flash drive. Black casing, dull silver band across the top. The label was scratched, but still legible. F2B. I froze. F2B. File to blackout. It was a sandbox project from sophomore year, something I wrote as a test script to simulate controlled privilege escalation without touching live system data. Completely local. Never uploaded. Never shared. The kind of thing I kept tucked away for reference, like a journal in code. It had no reason to be plugged into anything after that spring. It shouldn't have been here. I didn't remember leaving it in this box. I slid it into the port on my laptop with fingers that suddenly felt too slow. The drive mounted instantly. Only one visible file. A 64-character hex string for a name, encrypted, timestamped. Dated 1 week before the school incident. My breath caught. I stared at the timestamp until my eyes watered. The creation date was precise, not spoofed, validated by the system. The encryption was mine. My structure. My naming convention. But I hadn't written this. I would have remembered. I launched the decryption utility I still carried out of habit, an old tool I had kept on every system I used since college. When the key prompt opened, my hands hovered above the keyboard. I hadn't used the passphrase in years, but the moment I saw the file name, it came back like muscle memory. The screen flickered, then cracked open into raw text. And everything I thought I had buried, everything I'd tried to move past, began to crawl back to the surface. The screen came to life with a low-resolution recording, the kind my old capture software used when it was set to default. No title screen. No music. Just raw video. At first it was silent. Desktop interface. School login portal. I recognized the interface immediately. Clunky, outdated, the same admin layout I'd been locked out of years ago. The mouse moved with precision, no hesitation, no fumbling. The login credentials typed in weren't mine, But I watched with growing horror as the session switched to administrative override, bypassing authentication logs, reassigning access variables. Then I saw it. My name. My student ID. It was being injected into the audit trail like a ghost identity, clean, deliberate, invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. He was in the system for 7 minutes. I watched him alter grades, just 3 of them. One for a student I vaguely remembered as the son of a school board member. One for someone on the soccer team. One for Nick. SAT scores were wiped from 2 accounts, mine included, flagged as corrupted due to account duplication errors. The mouse moved fast, like this had been rehearsed. There was no panic in the clicks, no fumbling for Windows. He even opened the school's VPN console and executed a proxy swap to point the session's origin to an IP address that matched mine from 2 weeks earlier, a date when I'd been logged in during routine maintenance. I watched as every digital breadcrumb, every line of damning evidence, was placed carefully at my doorstep, like it had always been meant to lead there. Then the screen went dark. A second later, the camera feed clicked on. He was sitting in what looked like his old dorm room. His hair was shorter than I remembered, clean-shaven, the same confident posture like he was posing for a brochure. He looked into the lens with the same expression he used when he was about to give a presentation, calm and almost bored, like nothing could touch him. "If anyone finds this," he said, voice flat, unblinking, "sorry, kid. But you'd have gotten out of this better than me." That was it. No follow-up. No explanation. No apology. Just that single sentence and a dead stare before the feed cut to black. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My laptop fan kicked on, a software that felt like it was miles away. My hands were shaking, but I didn't feel them. I just sat there staring at the blank screen, mind racing, heart somewhere deep in my stomach. Everything I had lost, everything I had rebuilt, the 4 years of exile and silence and doubt and rage, it had all been real. And none of it had ever been mine to carry. He did it. Nick did it. The same Nick who told me to apologize. The same Nick who said I'd survive it better. The same Nick who stood in our living room and watched our parents send me away like trash. And he had known. The whole time. He had known exactly what he was doing. It felt like drowning in dry air. My chest was tight. My ears rang. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. Betrayal doesn't even begin to describe the thing that took root in me in that moment. It wasn't just anger. It was grief. Not for what happened, but for everything I'd lost believing it had been my fault. For the silence. For the isolation. For the years I spent proving I wasn't broken when the truth was buried in a box under a roll of tape and a rusted fan. I closed the lid. Slowly. Carefully. Like if I moved too fast the weight of it might crush me. My fingers curled into fists against my thighs. My throat burned. I hadn't cried in years. Not once. But in that moment, I wasn't 17 or 21 or anything in between. I was just broken. Not by the world. Not by the system. But by my own brother. My own blood. And he had smiled the whole damn time. I didn't sleep the night I found the recording. I sat on the edge of my old twin bed, the same frame that used to creak under late-night study marathons, laptop open on my knees, staring at the frozen final frame of Nick's face, trying to make sense of it. Morning bled in through the blinds before I moved. I didn't shower. Didn't eat. Just packed up the laptop and drove to my parents' house without thinking. I didn't call ahead. I didn't want to give them time to prepare. They were in the kitchen when I arrived, drinking coffee in quiet tension, like the funeral had barely finished echoing through the walls. My mother blinked when she saw me, startled but not surprised. My father nodded stiffly, set his mug down too hard. I didn't bother with pleasantries. I just pulled out the laptop, set it on the kitchen table, and hit play. They watched. Both of them. Every second. My mother's hand crept up to her mouth halfway through. My father leaned back like someone had sucker punched him. No one spoke until the video ended. Then the silence stretched, so long it became unbearable. I had nothing to do with it, I said quietly, like I was still trying to prove something I never should have had to defend. My mother was the first to speak. "That was a long time ago," she said, her voice soft but sharp, like the edge of a blade disguised as sympathy. "There's no point in digging this back up." I stared at her. "You saw what he did. It's in the past," my father added, his tone clipped, like he was already tired of the conversation. "You've moved on. You have a job now. A life. Why throw that away trying to stir things up?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You exiled me," I said, louder than I meant to. "You didn't just believe I did it. You sent me away. You never even asked. You never gave me the chance to explain." My father stood up slowly. "We were trying to protect the family. It was a difficult time." "Protected from what?" "From the truth." He didn't answer. My mother wouldn't look at me. She just sat there with her hands clenched around her mug like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the room. I checked my phone. Still nothing from Nick. We'd agreed to meet. I told them I wanted him there. But all I got was a message. 3 lines. I did it for the family. You survived anyway. No apology. No explanation. Just that same smug detachment I saw in the video. Like this had all been calculated from the start. Like my pain was collateral damage in some twisted equation he never bothered to solve. I stood there in that kitchen, laptop still humming softly, and realized something I should have understood a long time ago. They didn't want the truth. Not really. They wanted the illusion of peace. The neat story they had built around Nick's perfection and my convenient disappearance. They had buried the past, not because it was too painful, but because it made their lives easier. Because acknowledging what happened meant admitting they were wrong. And they weren't ready to do that. They never would be. I didn't post it to get revenge. Not really. I posted it because I needed the truth to exist somewhere beyond my own hard drive. Somewhere public. Somewhere permanent. I opened a throwaway Reddit account, titled the post carefully, something neutral but hard-hitting. My family let me take the fall for a cybercrime I didn't commit. For years later, I found proof it was my brother. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't beg for sympathy. I laid it out clean, like evidence in a case file. I uploaded the decrypted screen recording in a compressed folder, embedded the link with hashes for verification. I added technical context, explanations of the spoof session, the manipulation of audit logs, the IP mapping, all timestamped with integrity checks. I included still frames of the video, redacted names except my own, and uploaded transcripts of the file metadata and a brief write-up of my expulsion process. Then I hit post and closed the tab. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few upvotes. Maybe some tech people debating whether the script could have been faked. But when I checked again a few hours later, the thread was already trending. 60,000 upvotes. Hundreds of comments. Then a message from a verified account. Then 2. Then 10. By midnight, it had been cross-posted to 3 legal subreddits, 1 cybersecurity board, and a digital rights advocacy group that sent me a direct message offering pro bono legal support. A retired attorney DM'd me a full breakdown of my civil options. A journalist from a mid-tier investigative site asked for an interview. Then another from a national paper. Then a podcast host. Then someone from a media outlet with initials I'd only seen on headlines. By morning, the school principal had locked his social media and issued a vague press release about ongoing concerns. 2 days later, he resigned. An online petition demanding the school district reopen my case hit 20,000 signatures within 48 hours. By the end of the week, someone leaked emails from the school board from 2019 showing internal discussions about expelling me quietly to avoid escalation. People were angry, not just at what happened, but how easily it had happened. The thread became a case study, a warning, a viral narrative about what happens when institutions care more about appearances than people. Strangers from halfway across the world wrote paragraphs defending me. Some said they had been through something similar. Others just wanted to say they believed me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was shouting into a void. I didn't respond to most of the comments. I didn't post follow-ups or updates or pictures or thanks. I just watched it all unfold in silence, laptop screen glowing in the dark, the same way it had that night in the basement. This time, though, the silence didn't feel like absence. It felt like justice, or something close enough to touch. The investigation didn't start with a knock on Nick's door. It started with a subpoena. Quiet. Official. Mechanical. A digital forensics team from the state reviewed the flash drive I posted. Then they requested the school's archived server logs, pulled backups from the district's IT systems, and matched every timestamp, every session ID, every proxy route. It wasn't just the screen recording anymore. It was a full, authenticated digital trail of deliberate manipulation, unauthorized access, and calculated redirection. What started as a Reddit post became a criminal case file. His clearance was frozen first. No public announcement. Just a background freeze and a sudden absence from his office in the cybersecurity division of the federal building downtown. An internal memo leaked a week later. Audit pending. Access under review. Formal inquiry initiated. Then more reports surfaced. Not just the school incident. Misuse of internal credentials. Backdated edits in 2 project logs. Unauthorized system scans flagged as routine maintenance. They weren't explosive violations on their own. But together, they painted a picture. One the agency couldn't ignore. My phone started ringing again. Not from friends. Not from coworkers. From relatives. From my parents. From numbers I hadn't seen on my screen in years. My mother's voice on voicemail sounded like she'd been crying, but the words were sharp, not broken. I hope you're happy now. He worked his whole life for that job. You've destroyed everything. My father didn't leave a message, just a text. You could have handled this privately. Even my aunt, who hadn't spoken to me since the week after the funeral, called to say I was being cruel, vindictive, selfish. No one asked me how it felt to finally be believed. No one asked what it had been like to lose 4 years of my life while the person who betrayed me walked into a government job with a fake smile and a spotless record. No one asked if I had wanted any of this. Just the same question, over and over, from every direction. Why would you ruin your brother's life? As if he hadn't ruined mine first. As if exposing the truth was more shameful than burying it. As if I owed him silence after all he had taken. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because they weren't really asking. They didn't want answers. They wanted their version of the story back. And I wasn't giving it to them. Not anymore. Seattle doesn't feel like redemption. It doesn't feel like closure. It just feels clean. The apartment is high up, with fogged windows that turn the skyline into a watercolor at sunrise. I walk to work now, past the same espresso shop every morning, earbuds in, coat zipped tight against the cold. The company isn't flashy, but it's serious. Real infrastructure, federal clients, black badge conferences where people know my name not because of the scandal, but because of the tools I've written since. I sit behind 3 monitors at a glass desk in a building with keycard access and a view of the sound. Nobody asks me what high school I went to. Nobody cares about my brother. It had been almost a year since the post went viral, since the last call from anyone in my family, when the letter arrived. No return address, just my name, typed on the envelope. I almost didn't open it. I thought it was junk, but something about the weight of it made me stop. The paper was folded twice, neat. Black ink, careful handwriting. She didn't say much about herself, just that she'd known Nick. Summer tech camp. Said he used to talk about doing what it takes and protecting reputations. Said she never questioned it back then. That he made it sound noble. She didn't describe anything specific. Didn't accuse. Just hinted, lightly, in the way people do when they're afraid of saying too much but need to say something. She said she found my post by accident. That she read the whole thing twice. That it made her rethink a lot. Her last paragraph was short. Sometimes the truth can be scary, but thanks to you, I know it's worth fighting for. I sat with that letter in my hand for a long time. Longer than I expected. Not because it hurt. Not because it healed. But because it was the first time in years someone reached out not to blame me, or to silence me, or to beg me to bury it all again, but just to say it mattered. And I guess that's what it comes down to. After everything. After the betrayal, the silence, the years clawing my life back together. The thing I thought would never happen, someone out there listened. Not because they had to. Not because they knew me. But because the truth made them stop. Think. Feel something. I'm not sure what that makes me. I'm not the victim anymore. Not the villain. Not even the ghost in my brother's shadow. I'm just someone who refused to stay quiet.